Hey, beautiful souls and creative minds. Welcome to the Artist Stoop, the podcast where we turn the art world into your personal playground. I'm Jillian Zepeda, your host, and I can't wait to dive into the art world with you. Each episode will be kicking it with an incredible artist, unraveling their stories and turning the spotlight on the magic that happens beyond the brush. Get ready to discover new perspectives, forge connections, and immerse yourself one captivating conversation at a time. So grab your favorite beverage, maybe a sketchbook, and let's jump into the kaleidoscope of creativity together. This is the Artist Stoop, where art isn't just a thing you see, it's an experience you feel. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Artist Stoop. Today, we are joined by Jenna Kast, an artist whose journey into the art world didn't begin until her early 30s. After realizing the importance of living life authentically, Jenna picked up a paintbrush and never looked back. Jenna's vibrant and interpretive creations are a testament to her self-taught style, which she developed through a deep exploration of paints, pigments, and the natural world. Drawing inspiration from the positive energy she gathers from life experiences, exploration, and music, she infuses her pieces with uplifting vibes intended to resonate with viewers on a profound level. With collectors across the globe, Jenna believes that art carries the energy of its creation, and she strives to infuse each piece with positivity and joy. So join us as we dive into the colorful and expressive world of Jenna Kast. Jenna, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm very excited to have you on. I have been following you for a while now on Instagram. And actually, I DM'd you the other day about something, and then I realized we've DM'd each other before, and I just went back this morning and looked. I was like, when was that? I DM'd you back in 2021, asking you about art prints and the company that you use to make art prints. I didn't realize that. Oh, we've talked before.
Yeah, I love when that happens. I'll have what I think are new conversations with people, and then I'll see in our message history that we talked a year or 2 years ago, and it's always so fun to be like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it's, it's just crazy sometimes. I think at that time I was on the hunt on trying to get my prints going and whatnot, and asking around to other artists, what do they do? How do they do it? Is always the best way to find out information.
Absolutely.
And you were very, very forthcoming with information and very helpful. So thank you for that. I think I ended up going with that company and getting a couple of prints taken care of with it.
Nice.
I saw your post this morning, and I need to know more. So you posted that you have the big plastic tarp out, and you said it's that time again.
Yeah.
You rip up your old drop cloth that has droppings of paint from old paintings on it, and you tear it up and you make new paintings with it. So can you tell us about how you started doing this and all of that?
Yeah, this is something that's sort of a fun, I don't know, I feel like it's almost like a secret little side series that I do because it happens so rarely. But when I started painting in my first studio in my home, I didn't use a drop cloth because it was just concrete floor, whatever happens, happens. And I always thought oh, it's so pretty. The floor has all the spatters of paint and it's so cool. And then when I started painting in other studios outside my home and started using drop cloths, I was like, these are so cool. It's sort of a record, a history of all of the pieces that I've painted, and it's got all of these cool colors and shapes that just come about unintentionally. And so, gosh, several years ago now, I was I feel like I need to do, it's time to switch out my drop cloth for something new. It's I feel like I have to do something with this till I can just throw it away. It has all of this history of all of these pieces on it. And so I had a collector at the time who was looking for something for their second home, which is like a rustic cabin type thing. And he's like, do you have anything that would be like a little bit like more rustic or beat up? And I was like, well, I was just thinking about, I have these drop claws. I was just thinking about stretching them into pieces. And he's like, oh, yeah, like I want to do it. And so I was like, okay. So I had, from that drop cloth, I stretched a couple 48 by 48 pieces. And so we collected those. And then the next time I had a drop cloth, I made, I think, two pieces out of that and kind of put them out there. And he ended up stashing those up as well. So I just kind of have this tradition of, like sort of a changing of the guard situation where it's time to like retire the old drop cloth. It's a fun way to commemorate the process and all my work and all the pieces that have been created in like the lifetime of this drop cloth. And so this time I decided, rather than stretching these big pieces, I wanted to do something where I can take smaller pieces of the drop cloth and make it like create more pieces and make it a little bit more accessible for people. Because I have people who for years have been like, I want one of these artist studio pieces. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, there's only like a very few of them because if my drop cloths are small, like there's only two pieces, that
Yeah.
can come out of them. So I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like there's, they're never really available. And so I'm hoping this time I have a really large drop cloth and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be making some like, easier to hang smaller pieces because not everybody has room for a huge piece. So
Mm-hmm.
this time, there will be a lot more opportunities.
I think that's really, really special because it's just like if that drop cloth could talk, you know, and it's almost like it holds secrets of like
Exactly.
your past energy and all of that that saw the creations before it, you know. I think that's really, really cool that you do that. Um, so when will those be available? Like, how long does it take you typically to like paint a piece?
So, just my regular pieces, I would say that it probably takes, gosh, if I could like hit record on one piece, it would probably be maybe like 10 to 20 hours. But I tend to work on a bunch of pieces at the same time. I always have like three or four easels up and pieces like laying on the floor. So I have a lot of pieces that I kind of bounce back and forth between. While something is drying on this piece, I move on to this one, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how like my collections come.
Yeah, I'm finding as I've been doing these interviews that that's very, very common because I tend to work on one piece at a time. So like I'll be thinking about the other piece, but I have that downtime, like, oh, I can't wait for that to try. And it's just like, okay, I'll go do something. Like, because my studio is in a hallway in a bedroom. So it's just like, I'm gonna do a little laundry right now.
Yeah.
But I think I'd probably be more productive if I did have multiple pieces going at a time. Um, when you start painting, do you typically work in collections or do you do one-offs or how does that get going and how do you decide on a collection or a theme?
So when I first started, I was kind of just doing one-offs because I never was intending to like sell my work. I was just sort of doing it for myself. So I was probably about a year and a half into painting and selling my work when I started doing collections. And I loved how I was able to sort of build a story and theme and have this cohesive body of work that I could trace at one time. And, there's also like a lot of fun and excitement around it when collections are coming out because people are, watching me create it on, my stories and in my posts. And so there's this fun anticipation to it. But I love creating in collections just because I'm always creating so much at the same time. And so I get to kind of present this that here's what I've been working on for the past like 2 months in my studio. And it's also, as I've sort of developed this process, it's also helpful just logistically for production because, when I paint my pieces, I need to name them all, install hardware, I need to get photos taken so that they're ready to put on my website or, stock a gallery with. So it's kind of helpful on both fronts.
Yeah. And I think that, what people sometimes forget, or collectors, or just people who are watching, that, we are artists, are small business owners, and we have to do all of that. And, we've taught ourselves, how to do all of these things. I don't know how many YouTube videos I've watched to learn how to properly, put the wire on the back of a painting and put the right screws and get the right hooks and make sure you have the right wire. And then I don't know if you use a photographer or not, or maybe you probably did when you were starting, but then learning how to photograph your own work and put it up, make sure you have the right lighting. Like, it takes a lot of effort and energy, and it probably takes like a span, depending on how many pieces you have, like it might take several days or a week to get all of that taken care of, because it's extremely time consuming.
Absolutely. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes aside from painting. Like, you know, setting aside all of the like computer marketing website, all of that work. Um, just getting pieces to the point where you can give them to galleries or list them on your website. There's a lot involved, and thankfully my husband is a commercial cinematographer photographer, so he does my photos of my work, like for my listings and for my prints. So I kind of have to like book him like, next week is there like a half a day where you can take pictures of my paintings. So thankfully we work in the same studio. You can probably tell from the photo, but
Yeah, yeah,
um
I could see that.
so yeah, I have to book my photographer, and he has to edit the photos and all of that. So it's quite the process to get everything ready today.
I mean, that's pretty special to have that. It's one of those things, like, because a good photo really can help sell a painting. So you are very fortunate in that. So do not let him go.
Absolutely. It's nice because it's one of the things that I don't have to think about myself. It's just one more skill that I don't have to master or, be in charge of. So I can just give that to him, and then, I'm gonna get good images back. So it's one less thing that I have to take on myself.
Yeah. Um, so I want to circle back to something in your bio, which I think is something that's really beautiful. You didn't start painting until your early 30s, or till you were 30. And you worked in advertising, you worked, but all of that, and you just decided to be true to yourself, your most authentic self, and become an artist, become a painter. Tell us about that journey. And I think a lot of people are on the fence, are like, oh, I want to do that, or you know what I mean? Like, tell us how you got to that point.
So it's funny because I have this friend who like also started like a freelance business in her like mid to late 30s, and I'm like, oh, like I feel like we should start a podcast where we just interview people that start doing things later in their life, because when I was, when you're in your teens and your 20s, you feel like you have to have everything figured out and like your path in life is set. But yeah,
Right? Yeah.
I've always been like a creative person. I've always been an artist. I've done art as a hobby for my whole life. But I grew up in a really like small town, so I never really thought of being an artist as a job, as a thing that people did. So I knew that I wanted to be creative and that I wanted to pursue a career where I could be creative, which is why I chose advertising and marketing, and why I taught myself graphic design and did that as well. Um, so I always had, this time that I would devote to art, and, thought of myself as an artist, but a hobbyist. And then as I sort of got older and got, deeper into my marketing and graphic design career, I I felt like I needed more balance. So I started leaning more heavily on creative art and painting. And I did other things as well. Like I learned hand lettering and calligraphy, illustration. I would take, like little Skillshare classes or this or that to just kind of be creating and drawing, doing all those things on the side. And then it was early 2019. We had like recently moved into a new house where we had a little more space, and like, oh, like want to eat more, and there was a space in our basement that was sort of like open. So I was like, well, I'm gonna start, devoting more of my free time. And so I started painting um, abstract really for the first time. I painted, like still life and landscape and everything before. Uh, so I started making these like just colorful, abstract, like fluid, splashy pieces and started sharing it on Instagram because, that's what you do. Like you eat a meal, you share it. You do whatever, you share it. And
Yeah.
there was just a very instant positive reaction to it from people who were following me. Like the first handful of pieces that I made, people asked, "Can I buy those?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." So I started selling pieces really just to like have money for more supplies. And it just kind of snowballed from that point. And
Yeah.
so a few months into it, I was like, I feel like this could be a thing. Like you know, potentially have some sort of like natural or the proclivity toward this, and I absolutely love doing it. So I decided to devote the rest of that year to just exploring. So learning, painting a ton, uh, selling that work through different channels, social media, little markets. And it really snowballed into something where I was like, I think this could be like the thing that I do. Seriously. And so it just kind of grew over time. Just as I was getting started, it was like early 2020 and my work was really picking up, and then the pandemic happened. And I was like, oh, like crap. I had all these plans for like, oh, I'm gonna do markets and like really get out there with selling my work this year. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, well that seems like a brick wall that I'm coming up against. But I actually found that, and I'm sure many other artists experience this too in the pandemic, but online art sales just skyrocketed. And
Yeah.
so I was sort of really part of that, the cusp of this new movement in a way. And that year, like my work really took off. There were so many people collecting online and through social media. And so it really just was like gangbusters for a while. Like I couldn't keep up. Uh, and I decided to, in December of 2021, I ended up leaving my marketing and design job to do my art full time. So that's been my both my focuses.
That's incredible that you know, you had that ability and that time to be able to grow and like try new things and whatnot. And that's all ultimately like an artist's dream to all of a sudden be like, oh yeah, you want this? This is good. Okay, you like it? Okay, I'll keep going.
Yeah.
Just having it's really hard as artists because it's like sometimes like we'll try something new, we'll test it, and we'll show our loved ones, and we're like, it's almost like, hey mom, look what I did. And it's like, oh, that's great, sweetie. That looks great. That's nice. But when we get all this positive reinforcement from people who aren't our family, who aren't our closest
Exactly.
friends,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, I'm onto something. Yes.
Right.
It's just a really, really good feeling. Um, to have that little like endorphin high and this like that I'm doing what I'm doing is right, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and is I talked to other artists who become artists during the pandemic.
Mhm.
And it's just amazing to me because, in that time, like the rest of us, we were all just sitting at home. And what were we doing? We were watching TV, picking up new hobbies, and we were scrolling on Instagram. And like the money that people would have spent on traveling or doing that, they
Yeah.
decided to invest in their home,
Hmm.
and I think you're right. It was this new, I think it was the perfect time for artists because of that. But then I also think that, we look back in history and what art has brought to the world, and art at the end of the day brings so much joy. It has stories that,
Right.
it's part of like who we are, that people needed that extra little bit of happiness, that extra little bit of hope. And
Yeah.
that's why the art market just went, like it truly did just take off in a very, very unique way. And I think mostly for like emerging artists more than anything.
Yeah.
So what about, so you use a lot of liquid acrylic, it has a lot of movement to it and splatter and all of that. What made you decide to start using liquid acrylic over like a heavy body acrylic? Was it more just aesthetic? How it moved better? Like tell us, about why you chose that medium over maybe others.
I think initially I was drawn to it. I spent a lot of time, especially in that first year, uh, really just experimenting and playing around because I'd never made abstract art before. But, our abstract art that I loved was always sort of really gestural and splashy and, really action based. So that's probably where the initial inspiration came from to, make a painting where, the process is really part of the end piece. And I really loved in working with fluid acrylics, I love how they interacted with each other and the effects you would get from mixing them, from them layering on top of each other. And so that was something that I really explored and experimented with. Like my early work, you can scroll back as far as you dare in my Instagram feed. But my early work was essentially entirely fluid based, and then incorporating like other consistencies and marks and paint strokes sort of came in later. And so you can
Mhm.
sort of see that evolution in my style from starting primarily fluid to moving to, looking at marks and defining composition that way to now my pieces are sort of this 50-50 balance between uh, this fluid work and more defined shapes and areas and bits of composition.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Like working with fluid that has this ability to mix really well with, a lot of other things. And you do have that beautiful balance and you do, and it's not just splatter. Your work is distinct where you do have, at least from the collection that you just released,
Mhm.
you have, it's almost like these overarching areas where you have the splatter in the background, or it looks like you put some down and then maybe you splotched up, and then you have some distinct shapes over the top where it has like some graphic design element to
Mhm.
it. And it's just really beautiful how you do balance that. And like you've had other collections where like you had that collection where it was just like all the stripes
Yeah.
kind of. Yeah, and so it's just like you can definitely see that you have, the lighter background of the fluids and then the over masking over the top. And I think it's just a lot of fun, and you can tell that it's like it's really playful. It has a lot of energy to it. So when you paint, because you say that it comes from emotions, it's kind of like visceral for you.
Mhm.
Um and each collection has a theme. So is there like certain music you listen to that helps inspire that? Is it like more emotions? Like how do you get to that point for like a particular piece?
Yeah, I think it's sort of all of that combined for me. The pieces that I make are super heavily influenced by uh, like my current like emotions and mood at the time. They're influenced by the places I travel and the things that I observe there. They're influenced by the music that I listen to and I create, which, all of those things vary over time. But I still think, the way that I sort of like take in things that I observe and feel from the environment sort of gets run through this filter of my brain and comes out, at least in like the same sort of like style, but you can definitely tell like the subtle influences between uh, different collections or different things that have inspired me throughout the process. But I have a lot of my inspiration comes from the natural world. So I like traveling, I like observing sunsets, like being in different environments. And I tend to take like sort of like both like some visual elements of structure and layout and landscape from those experiences. And then the colors as well, and sort of I guess that twist and amplify them to be like what my actual inspiration is. And the work that I've been doing lately, like in the past 8 months or so, has been really heavily influenced by both sort of like a resurgence of interest in my initial really heavily fluid work and a trip that I took in June where I was basically just sitting on the beach all the time, like watching sunsets, watching the ocean. So a lot of that comes through in my work. My work is almost like no pseudo Leopard I guess.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think you could probably, if you're someone that's inspired by that as well, I think maybe consciously or subconsciously you could connect those 2 points. But it's just a really, a really fun experience, and I feel like I'm constantly learning and growing and developing as an artist. But I feel like this work that I've been in the last 8 months or so is really like I'm really honing this to a point where I just really love what I'm doing, and I feel like the work that I'm producing is very closely matched to what's in my head.
Isn't that amazing how you get to that point as an artist, like that you're just like this not only is it your truest authentic self, but being able to finally get to that point as an artist to be like what you see in your head is actually getting coming out. Like you get to that point where it's just like, I don't know about you, but I paint in my head like when I'm sleeping. Like if I lay my head down at night, I will start going, okay, I need to do something there. I need to add that mark there. I need a little bit of color here. And to know like, okay, what I actually envision is going to come out.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It's something where I never want to fully pre-plan work, but it's sort of the thing of like developing hand-eye coordination to the extreme, like being
mm,
able to actually express or embody what you're feeling and what is really intangible in a way that's like, oh yes, that's exactly how I'd want it to look. That's definitely a thing that has to be developed over time.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, so you talk about your color palette being part of like the natural world and how you see it and stuff, and I know what your current collection looks like, and I can definitely see the abstracted landscape. So tell us about your color palette a little bit more, and like really choosing colors. Is it sometimes a little bit more intuitive, or do you sometimes like, oh, I know I for sure want to have these colors in this, or do when you start painting, does it slowly unfold for you?
Yeah, everything I've always painted intuitively. So I never had a sketch beforehand or a color palette that's set in stone. So I always sort of develop that as I'm going through. And I definitely have kind of color combinations that I lean toward, and that kind of evolves and changes over time. But everything is really sort of developed as the piece is constructed. So starting from first layers, which is really like a pastel gradient typically, and then using like the splashy fluid layers to sort of start shaping the composition. Every time I add a new area or a new element or a new color, it's always influenced by what I feel like the piece needs next. And, I think having a background in advertising design and graphic design, it really heavily influences how my pieces are laid out. And, in terms of not just the composition, but the contrast and the color choices. I want it to tell a story, and I want people to be able to go on a visual journey through the pieces. So that's sort of subconsciously what is driving all of that. So color selection, the marks that I choose, how the composition reads, it's all sort of based on telling a story and having stories within stories. So ideally, collectors who purchase my work and have it in their home, I want there to always be something new to uncover. I want there to always be like a new story or a new area of the painting that just sort of adds to the experience of viewing it. So when I'm putting a piece together, that's kind of what I have in mind is finding that balance and finding all of these little stories within piece.
Gotcha. And you mentioned the titles. So you have some really fun title names that I'm assuming also tie into all of these fun little stories, but then also the inspiration and stuff. And I'm sure it also ties in probably the songs or whatever you were listening to, I'm guessing. That'd be my guess. Can you tell us a little bit about the titles and then maybe tell us a few and maybe tell us about that particular painting and what inspired it?
Yeah, I mean you're pretty spot on. I've never liked sort of taking the traditional approach with abstracts where you kind of like read them untitled or like the titles are very basic. And, I understand the idea behind it because you want the viewer to be able to have the interpretation of it. But I don't know. I just like doing things that maybe people think are a little weird, or I don't know. I just like making it fun and,
As it should be.
unstuffy.
Yeah.
And so I have quite a few collectors who will choose pieces based on the title. So for me, the title is just another like element of the piece. And I typically title pieces, very rarely do I title them while they're being made. So usually when they're done, I will sit with them and look at them, and the titles just kind of come to me. Sometimes it's just a phrase that comes to me while I'm looking at them. Sometimes they remind me of a song that I listened to while I was speaking them. And so they're just like little sort of snippets in time, either thoughts or, things that were involved in the construction of the piece. And sometimes they're just like ridiculous things that come to mind. I like, just sort of experimenting with how weird they can be. So it comes from all sorts of sources, but really I just like them to be fun.
Yeah. And isn't it funny how, you can sit with a piece and, as an artist, because I think my paintings talk to me. Like when you sit with them for a while, they communicate with you on some weird
For sure.
level. Like I know it sounds totally odd, and people are like, artists are a little cray cray, but it's true. Like when you sit with them for a while, or if you're not if it's not working, you come back and you're like, you'll tell me what to do, when to do it. But it's true. Like the painting will give you this energy to tell you, this is my name. This is what I need to be called. So what are some of the titles?
Gosh. Let me get my face. So I just went through like a big naming spell because I have all of these pieces that are in solo show right now. And so I did sort of two things. So I had to name a bunch of these pieces for the solo show because I was just sort of like getting all of this work together, put into this show. So I got to do, like, it's always fun to me when I get to sit down and name pieces, because I just get to, I don't know, have fun with it and like be a little bit off the wall. So I named these pieces, but then I also, like, on the back of some of them, and I made a little drawing. And I've never done that before, but I was just like, I don't know, in like a really like silly mood, or maybe I was just like, my brain was fried from thinking so much. But it was just like sort of a little fun thing that came to me in the moment. So some of the pieces that I have right now in the solo show, one is named Beige Antidote because it's obviously very colorful, and so it's sort of this like antithesis of the beige aesthetic, which I don't have anything against. But it's sort of this like injection of color. And I hope that people who, there are a lot of people who are scared to put color in their homes.
Right.
And one of the reasons I post so many like representations of my work in homes and in spaces is because I want people to see that, like, even though these pieces are colorful and bright, like, they can go into a space of color. They can go into, space like that has like beiges and neutrals and really feel at home. So that was sort of like a little nod for that, like maybe encouraging some bravery in people who are color shy.
I love that so much.
I have a piece called She's a Looker, which, I don't know, I just looked at it and that's what came to mind. So, yeah, that's an element. I have a piece that I painted that just sort of came together in like yellows and magentas and cyans. So that was one where I named it before it was finished, and I called it Primary Punch because as a designer and an artist, like the yellow, magenta, cyan is like, with primaries. So that just sort of like came in a moment. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. I think my favorite piece that I have, or piece name that I have in this current show, I titled Drinking Water and Minding My Business. Just because it what came to me when I was looking at it. And I feel like I'm not very good at like explaining where these titles come from because it's just like these recesses of my brain where I don't know, I'm just like being a little I don't know, maybe more funchy than I should or something.
No,
I
I
just like
think
having
it's
fun.
fantastic.
And I like how people react to the names too. It just adds a playful element to it. So yeah,
I think it shows your personality.
Yeah. Yeah, and some are more ridiculous than others. Like some are, it's really dependent on my mood. So some are like really sweet and romantic. Some are ridiculous. I have like a mini painting that I named Slut for Back Scratches. Just because like I was like incorporating in the names, I was incorporating all of these sort of like weird personality traits. And so like that just came to mind. So some were just like just ridiculous and others are, a little bit more normal, but that's just kind of how the process goes for.
And that's fantastic. I think that there's this perception of like sometimes that artists like we're so serious and we're really dark and moody and blah blah blah. Like,
Yeah.
no. We're
No.
weird, we're goofy, we're quirky. And I think like when you have that element to it, like by naming those titles and like doing the little scribbles on the back, that shows your personality. That also
Right.
helps like someone else is going to be able to connect with that
Mm-hmm.
quirkiness, that it's another level of creativity, you know,
For
and
sure.
it's, I think it's awesome because one, it makes me know that I'm not alone in my weirdness.
Mm-hmm.
Hi,
Yes.
welcome to the club. Um, and I just think that people, you know, they'll be able to find that level of connectivity through that story because
Mhm.
maybe it might remind them of something else, a
Right.
story that they had with a friend or whatever, or a sibling, or you know, it might spark a memory for them.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one more connection point that
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they can make to work. And hopefully like it makes them feel, I don't know, like a little more place. I know I have a lot of first time collectors. Most of my collectors are, it's the first time they've collected original art or the first time they've collected really large scale art. And so I want to make it a friendly experience. I want to make it feel like, sometimes artists are like up on this pedestal and
Yes.
so they feel untouchable or, difficult to understand. And I want to make it feel like your friend is making the pieces or like I'm your friend. So one of the reasons too why social media is so important to me and like showing the process and, bringing people into it because I don't want it to feel like, you go into a gallery and you're so disconnected from the artist and from the creation process. I want it to feel like a normal everyday thing.
Yeah, and I think this is so, so important. I'm so glad you brought this up because there is like this elitist, like, oh, I collected an original piece of art, like I'm super fancy. But like what people need to know is that art is accessible for everyone.
Yes.
Everyday people can buy original artwork from artists. It's not like, oh, I bought this at a really fancy gallery in New York, blah blah blah, you know, this artist is so mysterious. There are so many artists out there that want people to buy their work, that want to share their stuff, and you know, we are more accessible than they think, and it really isn't. We're just everyday people too, you know,
Right.
and we're not just, it's not, what am I trying to say? Like, it's not the old boys club that it used to be. The art
Yeah.
world is totally changing. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast is because I really wanted to make people see, future collectors see who want to start collecting, that they can have an awesome art collection. You know, they
Yeah.
can find real artists and connect with them, and they don't
Hmm.
have to go to a fancy gallery to do that.
Exactly.
And I get really fired up about this.
Listen,
And also
same.
people who do white kitchens. Just don't do it, people. It's just, as an interior designer, I've done design, like, can we just please be done with the white kitchens? Please be done with all the beige and neutrals. And can we please start adding color and pops of life back into homes and decor?
Yeah. I hope that we're sort of transitioning out of that era. Everything has to be white or everything has to be beige. And I think, if that's what people are comfortable with, I don't want to yuck anybody's yum. But I don't know. I feel like as I get older, I just want to like more and more create a space that's reflective of who I am as a person. And
Yes.
I think we can get, especially in this day and age, we can get really trapped into like the Instagram aesthetic
Yep.
where, everything has to be like picture perfect or like a backdrop for life. And, I want to hopefully inspire people to like inject some color into that. Like it doesn't have to be this blank space, this backdrop for life. It can be like more true to who you are and like more reflective of your personality and still be you, like still be your aesthetic.
Yeah, when I've done design, I had a designer friend who put this perfectly. They have what's called inside out meetings. So before they even start designing the person's home, they have these inside out meetings and they want to know who the person is on a deeper level. They want to know their personality. They want to know like the ticks and everything about them because they're not going to design a home that looks like everybody else's. They want to design a
Mhm.
home for you. And I
Right.
think that, you know, in your subconscious as a collector, like there's some funky little quirky personality traits.
Mm-hmm.
And that personality trait could be a quirky color. It could be, something completely offbeat that made you keep a little bit more private about yourself. You can bring those elements in art, people. You can find that quirkiness inside you in an art piece. And
Yeah.
then it doesn't have to match everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it maybe not doesn't need to be on display for everyone else. It could be more personal for you if you're more comfortable with that. But that's your inside out,
Right.
and I think that, it's just one of those things that I really want people to truly start connecting with as,
Mm-hmm.
you have your work is so vibrant, and whether it's your piece or another person's piece or whatnot, like people need to start collecting pieces to represent their personality 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally understand like wanting a relaxing space, but building a space through design and decor choices and art that really reflects who you are as a person just takes the space that you're living in to a totally different, more connected level. And it's always fun to see people who are like first time art collectors because it is such a cool experience for them. Like,
Mhm.
it's almost like having this epiphany of what it's like to have original art in their spaces and color in their spaces. And it's so fun to like to see that evolution happen in real time.
Yeah, 100%. And more people need to buy original artwork. Um, so Jenna, I know by the time this comes out, your show won't be there anymore. Um, so do you have any shows coming up for the summer, possibly that people need to be aware of or exciting things?
I don't have any shows scheduled for that I'm announcing yet, but the work that I have in the show now will transition to part of it will be on the website, part will go to a gallery that I'm represented by. So I always have on my website, I have a little artwork tab, and then I have all the places where my artists can be found. So right now it's my website and the solo show gallery and other gallery that represents me. But I try to keep it as easy as possible to find, especially because, there's work here and there's work there. And I want people to be able to find and view so that they can find the piece that fits with them next.
It's easy, accessible, and easy to purchase, people, right?
Yes.
We try to make it as easy as possible for them to go like, oh, I like that. Click buy. Right?
For sure.
So, everyone, I will have Jenna's website linked in the show notes. I'll have her email, how you can contact her. I also have, the links to the galleries and then also links to some of the pieces that we talked about if you were interested in any of them. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. You are a delight to talk to. I really enjoyed this. And if there's anything else you want to add or anything else you want to tell people at all.
I mean, I think that we covered so many different topics in our chat today, which is amazing. I do hope if anybody clicks on and listens to this podcast because they see that I started working as an artist later in life, if they've been thinking about doing something, making a career change, making their hobby a job, anything that falls, I hope that they'll give it a second thought, a more serious thought because of this, because, taking those risks and being able to do something with your life that is, more closely aligned with who you are as a person and lets you sort of fulfill that part of yourself is so worth it. It's so worth it.
Yes. 100%, 100%. Well, thank you for those final words. We really appreciate it. And those are words of wisdom, people. Just do it. Just take the 90s slogan. Just do it. Just go for it. All right. Thanks, Jenna.
Yeah, thank you.
And that, my friends, wraps up another colorful episode of The Artist Stoop. A huge thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their art and stories. If you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on the next Stoop chat. And don't forget to spread the love. Share your favorite episodes with fellow art enthusiasts, and let's build this community together. Connect with us on social media at JGuze Studio and Jillian Zepeda Art for behind-the-scene peeks, artist spotlights, and a sneak peek at my own art. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep that creative fire burning. This is Jillian Zepeda signing off from The Artist Stoop. And remember, the world is your canvas, so paint it vividly.